All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Zachary Goldman. I'm a junior here at Vanderbilt University, and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. If I were to say the words West Philadelphia, I would wager that most of you would immediately think of The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, a very popular 1990s television show starring Will Smith. I used to make the same association, and I'm from Philadelphia. But that all changed my junior year of high school when I spent 5 days volunteering in a 7th grade classroom at James Rhodes Elementary School. James Rhodes is a public academic institution serving grades K through 8 in a pretty rough neighborhood in West Philadelphia with a generally high crime rate. While I was there, I spent most of my time tutoring students in a one-on-one setting. And on my first day, I sat down across a table from a 7th grade student, not much different than this, and I watched him as he looked down at a book with a 1st grade reading level. He stared down at the page, and he was unable to make sense of what was there. And quite frankly, I found this shocking that a 7th grader wouldn't be able to read a 1st grade book. And I thought this must be some sort of anomaly. Unfortunately, I found that many of the students in this class were massively underperforming and weren't able to complete work that was designed for students 2, 3, 4 years younger than them. And this concerned me, so I spoke to the teacher. I pulled her aside and said, what's going on here? And she told me, in this district, there's an average of 30 students a class with roughly one instructor. Sometimes they get a teacher's assistant. And in these classes, students have reading levels that vary, and the teachers can't really teach to each individual student. So what they do is they teach to the level that most of the students are currently at, and then they pass along the students that are behind. They sweep the problem under the rug with the hope that eventually someone will have the time to properly educate these students and give them the attention that they deserve. And quite frankly, I was really upset to hear that. So tonight, I'm going to propose a policy that will both put students in a position to succeed, as well as remedying the problems of our public education system. I'm advocating for a tuition voucher program on a national level that will allow students from low-income backgrounds enrolled in underperforming schools to be given the option to claim a tuition voucher equal to 100% of their state's per-pupil subsidy to be used to pay tuition at another academic institution in their area. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about the current state of our education system. Then I'm going to discuss some frequently asked questions about my policy. And finally, I'm going to explain to you why this particular policy will work. So each year, the Department of Education conducts a national assessment of educational progress based on test scores and matriculation rates of students in the public schools. And what they found is that 27% of 12th graders in our public schools have below basic reading and writing skills. The Department of Education defines basic reading and writing skills as a partial mastery of the prerequisite knowledge and skills that are fundamental for proficient work at each grade level. What that means is that 27% of our high school seniors who have passed through our entire public school system do not have the skills and knowledge capable to complete their work proficiently. That is outrageous. They've gotten through our entire public schooling system and they just can't do the work that they're supposed to be able to do. But we've known this for a while. Our education system has some problems. It's difficult to educate so many students with different needs. We've tried different remedies to improve the quality of education in the United States, but according to the Department of Education's annual national report card, over the last 10 years we've seen little improvement in the quality of our schools and students' education. We have tried over and over again with various types of legislation to improve our schools. Unfortunately, we've met little success. No Child Left Behind was a huge and expensive piece of legislation that we passed during President Bush's term, and it's had little effect, unfortunately. According to the Secretary of Education, currently 82% of our high schools could be defined as underperforming under No Child Left Behind. 82% of our public schools. That is a failure rate that I don't deem to be acceptable, and I don't think any of you should either. But this has serious implications on a national level in terms of competition, international competition. The Organization for Economic Development and Cooperation, an international research organization, found that 15-year-olds in the United States rank 25 out of 30 nations in math and 21 in science. Those are 30 of the nations with the strongest economies in the world. Now, what does that mean? In 10, 15, 20 years, our workforce isn't going to be able to compete. This is a serious problem. We have to do something about it now. Our workforce, or the children are our future, and we're letting them down. But this doesn't just cut off at high school. It's not just our generation. It's not just the students in public education right now, because according to the National Assessment of Adult Literacy, also conducted by the Department of Education, 14% of adults have below basic reading and writing skills. That means 30 million American adults don't have the reading skill to fill out a tax form. That is crazy, and we need to do something about it now. So I'm going to answer some questions that are commonly asked about this policy. First, who will qualify? That's families whose annual income does not exceed more than 300% of the national poverty level. This is a similar metric used to qualify students for reduced price lunch, a very successful program that we've had in the public school system. Just to give you an example, for a family of 4, that's about $67,000 of income. So a large portion of our population falls into this category. Next question is, who will determine school performance? Because students can only receive vouchers if they're in an underperforming school. Under my policy, this would be left up to the states. We've seen that a national benchmark for education just doesn't work. No Child Left Behind tried to set a national benchmark, but unfortunately each state is in a different place. They have different budgets, they have different student needs, and we just can't accommodate for all of it with one benchmark. So we need to leave it to our state legislatures to find reasonable levels to hold the schools accountable. Now, next people might ask, how much is this per pupil subsidy? What will students be able to get out of this program? According to the Department of Education, it's roughly $10,000 per student. Now, it's a little bit less here in Tennessee and a little bit more in the state of New York, but if you adjust for cost of education and living, it is a sufficient amount to pay for a student to be able to attend another academic institution. And finally, what institutions would this apply for? And this is any public, private, or charter school in a student's area. The schools don't have to accept the students if they're not qualified, but they do have to accept the vouchers as a valid form of payment. Finally, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the concerns that people have voiced and specifically cite some real-world examples. So in 1989, Milwaukee, Wisconsin introduced the Parental Choice Program that allowed students whose children were in underperforming schools to claim a voucher and enroll them in local private schools. The Washington Post conducted an analysis of this program and found that 64% of students who took advantage of these vouchers graduated on time, as opposed to 36% of students who were enrolled in the public schools. But this isn't surprising to me, and it shouldn't be surprising to you. If you put a student in a better school, they're likely to have a better outcome, they're likely to do better. That's not the controversial part of this topic. But some people have said that you're going to take the best and the brightest out of these already dejected schools. You're going to take away their funding, and they're just going to spiral down and down. Nothing's going to improve. But analysis of the Florida A+ program, a program similar to the one that I'm advocating for tonight, tells us that these programs, in fact, do work, and competition does improve the quality of public education. So, like I said, Florida, about 10 years ago, instituted a program for their public schools that analyzed analyzed the performance of schools based on matriculation rates, grade point averages of students, and standardized test scores. And the Manhattan Institute for Policy Research conducted a 5-year study of this program. And what they found is that schools facing voucher competition, those deemed to be unsatisfactory, to not meet the standards of the state, saw the biggest jumps in improvement on test scores from year to year, and that those that were threatened with voucher competition 1 year away from having to compete with vouchers saw the second largest jump in test scores. What does this tell us? This tells us that if you make these schools compete for the precious economic resources, they will improve. They will find ways to educate their students more effectively because they're held accountable. Makes sense. So just to restate my policy, I'm advocating for a national tuition voucher program that will allow students from underprivileged backgrounds to claim a tuition voucher equal to 100% of their state's per pupil subsidy to apply to a better school in their area. And tonight, I'd like to leave you with a quote from Senator Anthony Williams. Senator Williams said, "Standing in the way of school choice for needy kids in failing schools is like Governor George Wallace standing in the doorway of a classroom to continue the segregation of the 1960s. Too many children are trapped by their zip codes in schools that are not making the grade. Let's open the doors to freedom and opportunity." Thank you.